Okay, everybody, I am so excited today because I am joined by Annarah Cymone, aka Sandra, in the Midnight Club. We're going to be talking spoilers, so make sure you watch the whole show first before you watch this interview. Annarah, how you doing today?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to have you on. Definitely one of my favorite people in the Flaniverse now. We can actually officially say you're one of the legends. You got two under your belt now, which is awesome. So people
Thank
who
you.
loved you, oh, no problem. And people loved you from Midnight Mass. It's exciting to see you in this. Was there anything you brought from that experience that you learned to the Midnight Club?
hmm This is like the same question I got asked at a panel on Comic-Con, and I'm just going to say the same answer because it's so true. In a Midnight Mass, I was working with a lot of just like incredibly talented people who were so generous and so kind on and offset. And so I think one thing that was important to me was to be a generous actor, and like I never thought about it before, but it's something that I want to continue throughout my career, and I hope I brought to the Midnight Club as well. Um, I remember specifically I was doing a scene with Robert Longstreet in the trailer, and he's like the nicest human being ever. And I was so nervous, but when I was doing the scene, I was so calm because it felt like he was giving so much in his performance, and he was such a giving human being, but also a giving actor within the workspace. And so that's something that I hope to bring to all my projects.
Oh yeah, that's a great aspiration to have. And yeah, that's a great thing to learn. And it's awesome that Robert Longstreet's also in this show, which is another great Flaniverse person. But also, when first reading the script for the Midnight Club, what was the most important thing you wanted to make sure you got right about Sandra? Like what jumped off the page to you?
Yeah. I mean, upon first read, and a lot of people have come to me and like and been like, I hated her, but like I wanted to make sure that she was understood because I think that's all that she wants in her life. And she can be very stubborn. But I think one thing I hope to take away from Sandra, like even playing her, is that she's at the end, she becomes a very open book and an open person. And I think she allows other people to print on her and she can print on them. And it kind of like she can create herself without being so harsh. But yeah, I guess she stays true to herself. And I think that's really important, but she also allows for growth. Which I think that's something that a lot of people, or me included, you want to be like, no, this is the way. But there's a lot of other ways out there, and you can learn, I think.
Yeah, totally. And I think that's what's great about her character arc, like you just mentioned, about the growth that goes on with her. Now, playing the character of Sandra, though, who has a strong faith, being in that character's head, do you have to be thinking on faith terms a lot with her choices you're making as an actor with her character? Like, was that kind of a different experience?
I mean, sometimes. I mean, I did from Midnight Mass because she was also religious. I did read like the Bible and all this stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm not particularly religious, but I mean, it does influence certain ways people behave, but I think it's just like it's just a character trait. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to control who she is as a human being, and I think that's kind of what you see at first glance is like, oh, she's just religious. She's just doing all this and this, but she's
Right.
more than just what she believes, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. No, that's a great answer. And I totally got that vibe from Sandra, too. So, also interesting about this character of Sandra is episode 4. She gets the big Sandra episode. She gets to tell her story, Give Me a Kiss. And it's this old school detective story. Now, before we even get into that, I'm wondering as I rewatch the show, there's a moment Sandra looks at Spence's arm and sees the blood clot before she tells the story. Do you think she have told the story if she didn't see the blood clot on his arm in that moment?
To be honest, I think I mean, that was something that pushed her to do it even more, because she's like a nervous, anxious person. And like,
yeah,
I think I think she's always got a plan. And I think that she had like this thought out and she was like nervous and scared. And was like, am I going to do it? Am I not going to do it? And I think that was something that like pushed her a little more into telling the story. Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense. I like that. And it's interesting. Speaking of the story, I love this character you play of Alice Palmer.
Yeah.
Talk to me about the inspiration for your portrayal of her. Was there any maybe films or characters you kind of were inspired by to pull off Alice Palmer?
I mean, Mike and Michael Famignori, who was the director of that episode, gave like a whole list of films to watch. I remember loving Casablanca, and then I watched Brick, which is like a new telling of like the film noir situation. But yeah, she wasn't specifically based off of one person, but I think that I just took from a lot of those things I watched. And we tried to also, we did a lot of rehearsals for that episode. We tried to kind of get the cadence and all that stuff. So that was quite nice. I mean, but the clothes and the hair did it all, really. I mean, like,
oh, come on. You're selling yourself short. No, you killed it. And it was so cool to see you do that character. And it was probably one of the most exciting episodes for me because it felt kind of more out there, which I liked. And I like to the chair getting interrogated by Jake, and we have this heavy rain pouring. I thought it just looked amazing too. So what did this actually look like on set for you? And was this the most challenging scene yet for you in the Flaniverse?
I mean, yeah, I think so, because it's like a very specific style. And I remember like I was so nervous and Chris was so nervous because we were like, okay, we're just gonna do it as many times as we need to. And Michael Famignori, who's like absolutely fantastic, was so like helpful. But on set it looked pretty cool, pretty gnarly. Like even in the detective scene where I'm with Heather, the rain was real and like Chris was really standing there like getting drenched. And so like all the really beautiful like cinematography and like little things that are put in it from Michael and from the DP and stuff like that, it kind of looked like that on set, which is really cool.
Yeah, that it looked amazing. It came out awesome, and it was good too because it just that working with your guys' performances was something I'll always remember. And what's interesting too is you mentioned earlier in the interview about the character's growth. After the story, she says to Spence, "I'm sorry for being a bit of an idiot and people who treat you poorly. You can't love God and hate love." Do you think Sandra had a big character growth moment here in particular, or was she like already that way and maybe just slipped up a bit with the whole Spence fight?
I mean, I think she's somebody who always wants like what's best for everybody, and that can sometimes look like her being like, let me control it, let me like tell you how you can have like the best thing happen to you in the perfect life. And I think that was a really important moment for her to understand that, you know, people are going down different paths and things like that. So I do think that was like a very pivotal moment, especially in her relationship with Spence, because it was quite strained before, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that, yeah, that was a huge moment. And yeah, it really was one of the strongest relationships was this Sandra and Spence relationship during the show, and seeing that change as it goes on. Then Sandra has this big episode 4, but also has a huge moment in episode 9 where we find out she's the one who's healing and not terminal lymphoma. So now for you though, as a viewer, as Annarah, do you believe the ritual healed her? What's your view on that debate?
As Annarah, I mean, I don't know, you always want to believe like that there's like some like, you know, magic going on. So I don't know. I don't want to, maybe if there's a season 2 they'll explore that a little more.
Okay, I like that. That's fair. And then also you got to spill the beans about, you know, oh, so she spills the beans about doing intercom as Triss, right? What on earth was Sandra thinking here? This is where I scratched my head with Sandra. Like, what, give me what she was doing. What's going on with this?
Yeah, I mean, I know Chris, like in the agreement, it was like, Chris and I would have conversations all the time. He'd be like, no, she did this and it's terrible. I'm like having to defend her. I'm like, no, because I'm playing her. Yeah, and that reading that was like, oh, interesting choice. But again, I think she's a little bit naive in that she thinks that she is the end all be all and like knows a lot. And then she's realizing as she's growing that she doesn't know anything. And so like, you know, with that, I think she was trying her best to like push her friends in the right direction, or what she thought was the right direction. And then she realized that like just supporting them was something that was all they needed, really.
Yeah. So yeah, good intention, which I like. And that's what I like about the character of Sandra. Mm-hmm. And with the finale, you had mentioned, you know, you talked about possible season 2, and we see she has an emotional goodbye and says, I don't want to go. Mm-hmm. But if a season 2 happens, like kind of what you were just saying, do you think there is more story for Sandra to be told, to be explored?
I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe I'd love to see, because now that she's going off, I'd love to see her a little bit happier, maybe. I mean, there's always so much to explore with all of these characters. They're written so well, and there's like so much life in them. But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say too much.
But okay, but to that point though, with her getting this news about healing, is there a part of her you think that there's like she almost wishes it wasn't her because you kind of get, I guess, survivor's guilt, right? A little bit in a sense.
And I mean, like reading that and trying to act that out, I was like, that was a stressful scene for me because I was like, how do you do that? Because you know, as a viewer, you do think like, if you haven't gone through something similar to what she's going through, then you do think like, you know, oh, when you'd be so happy, but she was so content, I think, and that was her life, and her friends were her life. You know what I mean? So now that she's healing and having to start all over, you know, because she's gonna have to do the treatments and things again, it's kind of scary as well, I guess. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. So that's interesting too, for sure. I'd love to see more of that explored. And then also, I said this in other interviews I did with other actors of the show, but I have to ask this question. So it's so cool that you guys got to play different characters and different stories in the Midnight Club. Was there any characters in particular you loved playing besides the Gimme a Kiss Alice Palmer? Was there any like fun set stories or anything you just experienced that you really enjoyed?
I mean, I think it's Wicked Heart, and then again, like it comes back because Igby's story comes back or something. I got to do one of the dead girls. It's about fun because I was just on set with like a giant gash and like blood and prosthetics in my hair. That was my real hair. It was just like they just let it out, and I was like, that was fun because it was quite chill, but I looked quite terrifying.
Yeah, totally. It came off terrifying. Good job on that. That was great. And then my last question for you before I let you go is, what character in the Midnight Club did Annarah relate to the most? Whether it is Sandra, or was there another character just by you as a viewer that you kind of spoke to you the most?
Ooh, I guess maybe. I mean, think I'm the least like my character, but maybe, but maybe a little bit Sandra, just because she's always like, you know, a little bit. Sounds so like pretentious, but like she's always just a little bit like on the outside, kind of, and trying to figure out how to get in, if that makes sense. And so I can relate to her a little bit in that sense. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love it. That makes sense. And you've just been a great guest here. Thank you for joining me today. So everybody watch Annarah just crush it in the Midnight Club on Netflix. Tell people about it, rewatch it. You'll catch more stuff on the second watch. Annarah, thank you so much for joining me. Hope to talk to you in the future one day.
Thank you.